So good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this session of 1 hour with Europe on the results of the public consultation on the European Innovation Act. We are very proud of having such a wide number of participants. We received more than 500 registrations for the events, so it demonstrates how important is a common document from the European Commission. We very much look forward to receiving information on the results and the outcomes of the consultation. Let me please introduce myself. My name is Andrea Sartori. I'm working at the NTNU, the Brussels office, as a senior policy advisor. I've been involved with strategic European initiatives on innovation and tech transfer for the last 15 years. Today I have this challenging task and interesting task, of course, of stepping in for my colleague Massimo, the director of the Brussels office of NTNU, who's been the front person of this program for the very first session, and he will be coming back in a couple of days for the next session of with Europe. But today I'm going to drive this session through. The 60 minutes of it, according to the working together. For those who are joining us for the first time, Europe is a multi-event series that is promoted by the Brussels office and organized on specific topics, very relevant topics that are shaping the European agenda on our MI. So our format is to invite a key speaker to address and present a specific topic very high in the list in the ranking of the European agenda, to hear from him or her on the job presentation, and then to exchange with him or her through a Q&A session in the second part of today. We are very pleased to be probably the first platform to host the first insights and the first outcomes of this public consultation. As you might observe, in national implementation, the European Commission is receiving the office consultation, and they receive more than 330 opinion papers and documents and comments from various stakeholders across Europe. We look forward to receiving and hearing from the European Commission's voice on these results. But let me move to the most important element of today's session, our keynote speaker, our keynote guest on my left. We have Branislav Trucina. Branislav is a policy officer working in the European Commission, DG. He is working in the innovation policy and access to finance. Branislav has been deeply and directly involved in the setting up, in the management, and the promotion of this consultation on the very first moments, so we can hear from the very process of the European Commission and what they receive as inputs from the stakeholders, and maybe some ideas for entertainment for next to come for developing the upcoming document of the European Innovation Act. Just a quick recap before leaving the floor in a couple of minutes to Branislav on the format. As I told you, he's going to share a presentation with 20 minutes of speech on the topic of the session. Then we are going to have the second half of the session, Q&A session again, where you will be given the opportunity to interact with our guest speaker. Just let me remind you some easy rules of the game. We are requesting you to make sure you register your name in the Q&A chat of the session, and I'm not going to read the questions from the chat. I'm only giving you the voice for interacting directly with the speakers. So I'm requesting you to unmute your microphone and to open your camera, turn on your camera, just to ask directly the question to the speaker. As a matter of politeness, please keep your question in 60 seconds of time, just to give the other participants towards the question. So now my introduction is over. I'll stay silent and give the floor to Branislav for his presentation.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Andrea, and thank you, Emil, for having me today. It's really a pleasure to be here to present to you of the public consultation on the European Innovation Act that concluded a month ago, and that we are now quite busy analyzing and also reflecting in our work on the impact assessment that we are currently preparing, supporting the Future Innovation Act. So to give you sort of a very broad view of the consultation, in a nutshell, we consulted for a period between July and October this year, and we did two types of consultation in parallel. We, on the one hand, had quite a comprehensive and all-encompassing public consultation questionnaire, where we ask a number of quite detailed questions pertaining to different areas where we see that issues when it comes to diffusion of innovation across the EU, or when it comes to the framework condition of innovative companies in the EU are. And to that questionnaire, we received some 202 responses, and 33 of these responses were coming from universities. And on the other hand, we also opened what we call a call for evidence, which offers a rather more open form way of consulting stakeholders, where the stakeholders can basically submit their opinions, their ideas in a free text format, point out the issues that they perceive being pertinent to the area that is being consulted on. So in our case, innovation. And there we received as many as 336 responses, and 59 of those were coming from universities or research and technology organizations. So to dive a bit deeper, here you can see some of or actually all of the areas that we covered in the public consultation. And they can be sort of broadly grouped under 6 headings. So under the first one, we looked at regulatory and policy frameworks and their relationship with innovation. And under this heading, we, for instance, looked at impact of legislation on innovation and innovators. We looked at, in this context, also at the regulatory burdens faced by innovative companies in the EU and innovators. We looked at potential benefits that that we could derive from having a definition at the EU level of companies that are startups, scale-ups, and innovative companies, similar to what we have currently in terms of a definition of small and medium enterprises, for instance, at the EU level. We looked at the topic of regulatory sandboxes as both places to test your innovation in market conditions, but also as places offering possibilities for regulatory learning. And we looked at the issues that pertain to coordination of innovation policies and programs across Europe. Under the second heading, we consulted on the issues connected to access to finance. And in the public consultation questionnaire, we focused a little bit on first the issue of public funding for innovation, as opposed to just public funding for research and development. So rather commercialization of research and development results. We looked at the financing in a broader sense for bringing innovation to the market. And we looked at a very specific issue of using intangible assets in financing of innovative companies. Under the third heading, access to innovation to the market. This was basically a heading really focusing on innovation procurement. And we looked at both public and private procurement and access of innovators to these markets. And on the other hand, we looked at how innovation procurement or how procurement frameworks could be more innovation friendly. Fourth heading, access of innovators and innovative companies to research and technology infrastructures. There we really focus on issues that innovative companies face when trying to test their solutions and develop their solution in what we have around Europe as state-of-the-art research and technology infrastructures, and how we can then improve these access conditions in general. And under the fifth heading, commercialization of publicly funded research results, which are developed at Europe's universities and publicly funded research and technology infrastructures, where we looked at things like IPR-related barriers. We looked at stimulating standardization and certifications by universities and research technology organizations, and we looked at industry-academia collaboration. And finally, sixth heading, talent, where we received, especially in terms of call for evidence, a lot of different ideas pertaining to academic careers, access of talent from outside of the EU. But in the public consultation, we focus mainly on the use of employee stock options as a tool for attracting and retaining talent, especially by small companies such as startups and scale-ups. So with this, you can see that, or you can see that basically the content of the consultation was quite broad and quite all-encompassing. So to go through the results of all of the areas and all the detailed questions, we'll definitely need more than 25 minutes that we have now. So I try to pick and choose some of the more interesting examples of the results that we gather, and I will try to walk you through them in the remaining of the time. So when we look at the first area, which is the regulatory framework, one of the first questions that we ask are basically, is there currently any piece of legislation that is impacting and hindering your organization in either developing, testing, or placing on the market innovation? And quite unsurprisingly so, quite a majority of the participants responded that indeed there is such a piece of legislation. So that hints to two things. It hints that indeed not all of the regulatory frameworks are fully adapted to innovation, and it also says that there is this famous eponymous regulatory burden placed on companies and innovators, which basically slows down innovation or makes it more difficult for them to innovate and to place innovative products on the market. Following up, we also ask whether the participants think that legislators should systematically assess impacts of the future legislation on innovation. And again, overwhelming majority of the participants really agreed with these statements and believe that when a new legislation is being prepared, innovation or impacts of such legislation on innovation should be taken into account and assessed in a systematic manner. So this gives us quite a good data in our thinking around how can we make the legislative frameworks better, how can we potentially see in line what is also announced in the startup and scale up strategy, some sort of stress or fitness testing of legislation vis-a-vis its impact on innovation. So this really is quite useful data for developing these kind of measures that we are currently looking into. Then still staying with the regulatory frameworks, I already mentioned that we are considering having definitions or establishing EU-level definitions of innovative companies, startup, and scale-ups. And in that sense, we're asking the stakeholders what could be the perceived benefits of having such definitions. And we listed some of those that we thought could be of relevance. And just to give you two examples. Majority again of stakeholders believe that having such definitions would allow for better options for lowering administrative regulatory burden of these types of companies face in the EU currently, and it would also allow for better targeting of support measures. And that's very much in line with our thinking that having definitions of these types of companies would eventually help us to better target whatever support measures there could be in the future to these types of companies. Then one last bit on the regulatory framework is the topic of regulatory sandboxes that is now being quite prominently discussed in the context of innovation ecosystems. So we wondered what the stakeholders again think about having regulatory sandboxes, and what are the issues also with the regulatory sandboxes that are currently established, or why we don't have actually enough regulatory sandboxes on the other hand. And stakeholders, they again quite overwhelmingly agree that the regulatory sandboxes should be established for emerging technologies, and there should be both more regulatory sandboxes at the EU level, but also at the national level. But when asked about the perceived benefits and perceived problems of the current regulatory sandbox frameworks, well, the benefits are quite clear. From sort of offering early structured dialogue with regulators for innovative products, through facilitating future compliance of these innovative products with the existing frameworks, to shortening the time to market for innovations. But with the existing sandboxes, the stakeholders identified a number of problems, including, for instance, quite a fragmented approach across the EU vis-a-vis sandboxes. So there seems to be a lack of coherence how such sandboxes are established across the EU, especially national sandboxes, and then there seems to be also a lack of sort of a mutual recognition when it comes to the outcomes of testing within sandboxes. So a number of stakeholders, for instance, complain that even if they successfully test their solution with one regulator in one regulatory sandbox in one member state, they often have to repeat such testing, or such results are not recognized in another member state. Again, this is all very, very useful feedback for us as we are considering in the Innovation Act to have both a general definition, what is actually a regulatory sandbox, to have again a EU level definition, as there is a fragmented approach to actually defining regulatory sandbox as well, but also to have some set of basic rules governing establishment, operation, and also the sort of the follow-up to the outcomes of the regulatory sandboxes across the EU, which would then allow also for more cross-border cooperation. Moving on from the regulatory framework to another part of the consultation, which is access to finance. There, I just picked two topics. One of them is financing of innovation. So as I already mentioned, financing of innovation as opposed to or as complementary actually to financing of research and development. So we have this famous 3% target for the R&D, but we see that we believe this is not enough. Huh? So we believe that there should be also a specific financing for innovation, which means commercializing actually the results that are developed through research and development. And once again, overwhelming majority of participants agree that there should be, on top of the R&D funding, there should be also dedicated public funding for innovation, and that having such public funding for innovation would also then have a positive effect in terms of crowding in private financing to innovative companies. And then we, as I already also mentioned, we look at a very specific topic, which is access to finance through using intangible assets such as IPRs. And there we first of all wanted to know, because we heard from some sources that this is an issue, but we wanted to know what is generally the experience across the EU with even trying to use intangible assets such as IPRs to finance companies. And innovators, and we saw that there is not a lot of experience across the EU for the time being. So a majority of the respondents, they either said they don't have any experience, or they just don't know about this possibility to finance with using the IPRs. But when you look at the reasons why this is the case, there are issues with this kind of model in the EU. There is, for instance, a lack of standardized and trusted IP evaluation practices in the EU, or one standardized model of evaluating IP rights across the EU. there is also quite a high, or resulting from this lack of standardized model, there is quite a high cost of valuation, and there is also, for instance, a lack of secondary market. But these issues out altogether then causing that there is not really an uptake of IPR-based models across the EU. The third topic, which is the access to markets, there we mainly speak about procurement in terms of our consultation. One of the questions that we posed was, what are the barriers that the innovative companies face when they want to sell their products to the public buyers? And here you see a list of some of the issues that were raised by the respondents. For instance, the models of public procurement models or practices that are currently in place put a lot of weight on price, but they do not take into account, for instance, the innovative side of the product. Procedures are often too slow, especially for smaller companies that have a higher turnover rates, and the often procurement procedures pose a very high administrative burden. That's, again, all of this is very useful data because we are looking at the possibilities of making procurement frameworks more agile and more adapted to smaller companies and to innovative companies. So we definitely will take into account all of the issues raised in our work in this area. And then a second part of our thinking around procurement is how can we actually make the procurement framework more innovation friendly? So how can we ensure that buyers, when they go purchase something via public procurement, do not only lean towards the established solutions, but they look at or look for innovation and innovative solutions in their purchases. And then again, we listed a few potential measures or practices that could be established in the EU in terms of making procurement framework more innovation friendly. And as you can see, there is quite a broad support for all of them, including that the EU itself should make its own procurement frameworks more innovation friendly. Moving on, access to research and technology infrastructures. There, I picked an angle on the current issues faced by small and medium enterprises, because that's something we were interested in quite a lot, to see what are the issues faced by smaller companies when they try to test their solutions in research and technology infrastructures. And again, just some of the results that I highlighted. On the one hand, majority of the SMEs, they said, I need access to research technology infrastructures to test my innovations and to develop and to test them. But on the other hand, either the access conditions are not really clear to me, or simply the infrastructure that I would be interested in is prohibitive in terms of letting me accessing it and testing my solutions there. So that's, again, very useful input for our work, making this access more open and more less prohibitive for smaller especially for small innovative companies. And here you can again see some of the feedback that we collected in terms of suggestions what the EU could do in terms of making access to research and technology infrastructures more open for innovators and innovative companies. We see, for instance, establishment of EU level of EU network of testing zones, connecting various infrastructures together and letting them cooperate and giving basically quite a comprehensive solution to innovators to test their solutions. We see that was often mentioned also in other areas, clarifying and simplifying state aid rules when it comes to access to research and technology infrastructures, which is, by the way, already being looked at by our colleagues in DG Competition when it comes to clarifying state aid rules and research and technology infrastructures. For instance, also there were a lot of suggestions in terms of promoting harmonized access frameworks to research and technology for infrastructures across the member states. And then for the fifth area, penultimate, commercialization of research results. There I chose these two statistics just to showcase that not always all participant groups fully agreed with each other. So here we asked questions whether there are still barriers for research results to be commercialized, and whether this is because of the insufficient capacities of universities and research and technology organizations in terms of standardization and certification, and in terms of IPR management. And that's quite interesting that when we take general pool of participants, majority of them agree that universities and research and technology organizations do not have sufficient capacities, both in standardization and certification, but also in terms of fostering commercialization of the IPRs. But on the other hand, universities and RTOs, they slightly disagreed, or there was a lower percentage of universities and RTOs agreeing with these statements. So there seems to be also a different perception in terms of capacities inside the universities and RTOs and outside. And then, however, majority of the stakeholders, they broadly agreed on what the problems are and what the measures should be to target these problems. So the problems, they go from, for instance, lack of resources in technology and transfer offices at universities. They also pertain to conflicting IPR policies between universities on the one hand and companies on the other hand, especially when there are collaborative projects. They also pertain to non-supportive academic merit systems, so meaning careers of researchers that often reward publication and not commercialization of innovations. And then when it comes to solutions, once again, we received a lot of suggestions. There are just some examples on the slide. For instance, aligning IPR conditions across the different public funding schemes, because that was also perceived to be an issue, or making the consortia agreements between university and academia in such a manner that they would encourage commercialization. And finally, last topic, which was talent, where under the public consultation questionnaire, we looked at the very specific area of using employee stock options for attracting and retaining talent. And there you can see that majority of the stakeholders agree that this is indeed this is one of the difficulties that innovative companies face when attracting talent, that there is not a harmonized scheme for treatment of employee stock options across the EU. But then in terms of additional issues that were identified either through the questionnaire or through the call for evidence, there, for instance, again, academic career paths were mentioned as a problem, access of third country nationals or access of innovative companies to third country nationals and their talent, and also, for instance, complex rules regarding teleworking from abroad, as just examples that we caught or captured from the other replies. So, but where does this leave us? This leaves us with the future European Innovation Act. So all of these were extremely useful topics to what will be the first ever legislative act exclusively dedicated to innovation in Europe, which on the one hand aims to help innovative companies to launch and to scale across the EU. And on the other hand, it also aims to help facilitate the diffusion of innovation across the EU single market. But of course, the Innovation Act is not the only tool in the toolbox, but there are other tools that will help to target one or many of the areas that I just discussed. So for the access to finance, for instance, there is the whole package of savings and investment union measures that are being developed and slowly being adopted. There will be, on the other hand, the ERA Act that should tackle the careers of researchers. There will be the 28 regime coming that should really establish a common framework of company law across the EU for the 28 Russian companies, etc., etc. So again, we should not see Innovation Act as working in isolation, but it will be flanked by many other measures that will help jointly to achieve its objectives. And then finally, looking at the potential building blocks, they essentially mirror what were the headlines of the consultation. So we will be looking at the easier and more coordinated framework conditions for innovative companies, where we include measures on regulatory sandboxes, for instance, but also coordination of policies. We will be looking at the access conditions to research and technology infrastructures, really leveraging the results of the public consultation in this area, access to markets, meaning procurement, encouraging commercializations, talent attraction, access to finance. And just then to give you a sneak of the timeline, we are currently finalizing the impact assessment of the Innovation Act, and we expect to come out with a proposal in the first quarter of the next year. That'll be it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Branislav, for this comprehensive and insightful presentation. We had a technical issue at the beginning with the sound, so before opening the Q&A session, I'm going to make a quick recap on the rules of the game for this session. Please make sure, if you want to make a question to Branislav, to register your name in the Q&A section of the Zoom connection, and I will give you the floor. So I will request you to turn on your camera and to unmute your mic and to make the question straight to the speaker. And I will kindly ask you to keep the question short, so no more than 60 seconds for the next sessions. But I'm gonna give the first floor to Turil Hernes, Professor Turil Hernes, the Vice President of NTNU for Research and Innovation. So Turil, please go ahead with your comments and questions. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea, and I hope you hear me well here.
Yeah.
So good morning, everyone, and thank you also to Mr. Branislav for this very interesting summary of input on the Innovation Act. At NTNU, as you know, we have been very pleased to take part in the European Commission public consultation, and we have actually made input to 7 key priorities and a set of concrete proposals as well. And we truly welcome the Commission's ambitions to strengthen European capacity to innovate and to turn knowledge into impact. We think that's a very important area. And especially as a science of technology university, we are convinced that universities can and must play a decisive role in shaping European innovation future, not only as providers of new talents and skills for the market and society, but also to have an active, to be an active driver of technology transfer, commercialization, and entrepreneurship. We also believe that the full innovation chain should be acknowledged, starting with basic research, curiosity-driven research taking place at universities, as the fundament that innovation that make impact builds on disruptive innovation emerging from blue sky research. So, as universities of science and technology, we operate on all TRL levels. We do basic research and technology, but also cooperate closely with industry on the higher TRL levels as well. So, I think it was very interesting in the summer. And also, I would especially mention the research and technology infrastructures, because that's very important to NTNU as well. A good example is that we are now building the Norwegian Ocean Technology Center, a 1 billion euro investment that will offer world-class laboratory testing facilities for ocean-based industries. And here, I truly believe that the SMEs and corporates will be able to develop and validate next generation technologies for the blue economy. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. And this is also, this investment should also be very forward-looking perspective that could efficiently the bridge gap between research and industry and research and market. I could also serve a valuable asset for the upcoming shift on water, marine and maritime research and innovation, whose final evaluation will take place in November. So, however, to fully realize the potential of universities in Europe's innovation landscape, we truly believe that we need a regulatory framework that empowers rather than limits. And you actually said a little bit about it in your presentation as well. So simpler and clearer guidance in these areas would allow the universities and their spin-outs to bring research-based innovation to the market even more efficiently. So I just want to summarize a little bit on the NTNU input to the European Innovation Act as well. So clearer, practical guidelines for intellectual property right and state aid tailored in the innovation context of universities, but also to support for European network for testing and innovation zones with infrastructures and so on. But also the recognition of universities of science and technology as essential partners in the European innovation ecosystem, which I truly believe is very, very important. So finally, we also believe that Europe's innovation capacity depends on being truly inclusive, involving associated countries, as you also mentioned in your presentations, and associated countries such as Norway, of course, to be fully in the design, governance, and implementation of new innovation initiatives. So just to conclude, I have a small question to you, Branislav. How do you really see the proactive role as universities of science and technology in the future European innovation landscape? And do you have any suggestions on how we as institutions could further enhance and perform our performance and contribution to European innovation goals? That would be very interesting to discuss as well. So thank you.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Cyril. Well, first of all, thank you so much for also to NTNU for the position paper, which we of course carefully read and considered, and it was, as you said, very to the point and very pertinent to what we are trying to achieve with the Innovation Act. So really, thanks a lot for taking your time and to develop it and to send it to us. That's really much appreciated. In terms of your question, I think you partially replied to it in your intervention. So especially universities such as NTNU that are closer to the market, but more broadly, universities in Europe, their role is indeed not only limited to producing talent. So it's of course a very important role, but then it's also producing the actual research and development that can be turned into innovation and innovative products. And related to this is the commercialization aspect. So technology transfer from universities to the market is absolutely crucial, and that's why it's one of the areas that we are really focusing on in our work on the Innovation Act. Then also universities acting as test centers. So once again, often universities house these research, especially research infrastructures, where we are trying to promote more access of innovative companies, startups, and scale-ups. So universities as test centers for innovations that's a super important role. And also, we should consider the role of universities in the framework of sandboxes. So universities have a potential of being a very important player in the area of regulatory sandboxes, where the conditions are often existing in the universities, whether it comes to the already existing structures of supervision, such as ethical boards that we have at the universities, and again also in terms of the actual infrastructures to test innovative solutions also as part of the regulatory sandboxes. So these are just some of the roles where I see universities being really major, one of the most important players in the Europe's innovation landscape, and I think this role will just continue to grow.
Thank you, Branislav. And thank you, Turin, for your intervention. I suggest we move to the following questions. The first one in the line I see is Philip Colson. Philip, please unmute your mic and turn on your camera so you can ask your question directly to our guest speaker. We are allowing you to talk.
Yes, hello. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. It was more of a technical or methodological question on the number of stakeholders that replied to the survey and how they are distributed throughout different sectors and across the member states. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Branislav?
Thanks a lot, Philip. So as I already mentioned in the beginning, in terms of the absolute numbers, so to the survey, so to the questionnaire, we received 202 responses, and then to the call for evidence, so this more free text part of the consultation, we received 336 responses altogether. And the distribution was so 33 universities from the 202 responses to the questionnaire. There was a large amount. I don't have the numbers with me readily available, but there was a large amount of businesses, so that was probably the most prominent stakeholder groups, where companies, SMEs, and business associations. Universities, as I already mentioned, we had some member state authorities, and we had quite a few private EU citizens that also responded. And in terms of the geographical spread, I think we received at least one reply from each EU member state. So we really managed to capture voices from across the EU and from outside, like Norway and like other associated countries. But I think the most prominent amount of replies came from more innovation from the countries that are sort of the better performers when it comes to the innovation landscape. So we received a number of replies from for instance, Netherlands, Belgium, Denmark, but again, quite evenly spread across the EU as well.
Thank you very much, Branislav. The next person in line is Sandra Hesping. Sandra, please unmute your microphone and switch on your camera. We are allowing you to interact with us. So in a few seconds, you will be connected. I see you are now connected. So please directly ask your questions to Branislav.
Hello. Now you can hear me?
Yeah, we can.
You can also see
hear
me.
and see you. Welcome to our session.
Hello. Sandra Hesping from the Eindhoven University of Technology. And my question is, because we are collaborating with industry a lot. We are sitting here in an ecosystem called Brainport. And you were talking about the network of testing zones. So that is a little bit vague. And is there already kind of a timeline, or are there calls you are envisaged? And what are the conditions for these calls? Because universities would like to know about, can we host such an infrastructure, or are we a partner in such a testing zone? So yeah, a little bit more information would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sandra. Maybe there I should have been more clear. So what will be presented were mainly the ideas that we received from the stakeholders that that were suggested, and actually the testing zones are coming from NTNU. So maybe Andrea, you want to say a few words about what you meant and what you thought about when you were suggesting this.
As our vice president highlighted, we are investing a lot of resources in setting up and managing very developed infrastructures, RTIs mainly. The aim is, of course, to enhance collaboration with companies and startups and SMEs participating and testing their solutions in our campuses. Of course, we are members to a various set of associations all over Europe where we have some counterparts like us, mainly technical universities that are open to build these testing alliances for technology infrastructures. And this can be maybe a potential pilot action for the future to be considered. I don't know if my vice president would like to add some more comments on that.
Thank you, Andrea. I think you sum up quite well. So we do have a lot of research infrastructure that have access for the industries as well. But of course, we need very clear rules. And one issue that's very important, I think, is also how this infrastructure can be supported and financed due to state aid rules. And I think this is perhaps different in different countries and so on. So it's very important that we have an open dialogue and also regulations that are transparent and equal to all, so that it's possible to use the infrastructure both for the industry, for researchers and so on, to develop, their results into innovation and also testing for market potential and so on. So in this respect, I think EU could help to make clear regulations and rules that must be in place in order to be able to make these infrastructure available for both industry and the public sector and other research in institutes, universities, and so on. Thank you.
Yeah, and another example we've been having in our daily work is maybe a startup or an SME or even better, a corporate can be interested in this innovation journey, so they can start working, for example, at the brainport of Eindhoven, and then they need a period of the development at our Ocean Center.
Yeah, and we also see very often that very many of the founders from university, the PhDs, postdoc, and so on, that are making startups, they would like to use the infrastructure that they know from university research, also for testing and so on. And we have that availability for our researchers and also those who wants to make startup and scale up and so on, and also for the large industries as well. So we have rules and regulations that make that possible. That was actually, and also when, the government, I think it would be like that in other countries as well, when the government are spending a lot of money building excellent research infrastructure, they want them to be used by industries and researchers as well, all over Europe.
Thank you, and to Turil and to Sandra for a question. Let's move to the following one. Now we move to France with our colleagues, Eric Fouché. So Eric, as always, please unmute your mic and turn on your camera, and we are allowing you to join our chat.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for your presentation and the result of this consultation. Just maybe another question is concerning, is there any specific link between the ERA Act consultation and Innovation Act consultation? Because Moreover, it's a question of silo, I would say, because we have the impression that it's concerned two different audiences, although they are common point. So how you envisage to have a common view because the same stakeholders would be consulted? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I mean that's one of our many primary roles that we have, is to coordinate also with the colleagues that work on the ERA Act, where on the one hand, as you mentioned, there is a lot of touching points, for instance, in form of major stakeholders like universities that would be partially concerned or very much concerned by the ERA Act and also concerned by the Innovation Act. On the other hand, where we draw basically the line between these two initiatives is really this notion of commercialization and innovation. So on the one hand, ERA Act are very much focusing on the R&D target, careers of researchers, etc. With the Innovation Act, we really want to then take the innovation, take the research developed by the universities and by the research institutions and put it onto market. So this is basically roughly the split between those two initiatives.
May I ask just for an additional question according to what you said, because you say commercialization, and you mentioned in your study, yes, also the link to have a public funding, yes. But how you see the result on private funding? What are the consequences? Is it a clear link between the two? Because we know that there is a lack of public funding in Europe for the time being. So this is a question. Sorry for this additional question. Thank you.
No, so as I mentioned, so a link between the private and public funding. One of the clear links we see is that it's really the potential of public funding, also when it comes to commercialization, to crowd in then further private funding. So this crowding effect of public money. But of course, it's not sufficient only to fund innovation and commercialization only with the public money, and there comes really the need to stimulate the private funders, and that's something that in the context of the Innovation Act consultation, we, for instance, look at this topic of IPRs and sort of trying to make it easier also for the private funders to assess IPRs and to accept them when they fund innovative companies and innovations. But then there is a broader set of measures, whether it is, as I already mentioned, the overall framework conditions for private funders like venture capital, risk capital, angel investors, etc., that are more being tackled under this umbrella of the savings and investment union measures that are being developed, or they are really this blended type of financial instruments, such as our own EIC, that play a significant role.
Okay, I see we have two more questions from the audience, unless someone else is willing to raise the hand. The next one is Mr. Amleto Gabellone. So I'm asking him to turn on the camera and unmute the microphone. So now we are allowing him to join the chat. Amleto, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning. Can you see me and hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. My question is more related to the defense landscape and defense sector, because I ask if there is any harmonization foreseen of the European Innovation Act with the Readiness 2030 in terms of as a military and as a taxpayer. My fear is to see stockpiling of innovation, and innovation is closely related to the high technology defense landscape, and more innovation is a sort of a bilateral path between dual use or civilian and military requirements and market as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, and that's a very good question. That allows me to say two things that I realized that I haven't said in my presentation. One thing is that our thinking about the Innovation Act is that it is going to be completely sector neutral. So we are really quite consciously for the timing trying to avoid having sector-specific measures in the Innovation Act, with the idea that we want to help the entire innovation ecosystem across the EU, whatever the sector is. So that means also if the sectors are dual use sectors, they should also benefit from the overall improvement of the conditions brought by the Innovation Act. So that's one part of the thing. Second part is that the Innovation Act is also not aiming to be a funding instrument. So we are really looking at legislative measure, but not establishing funding programs. So again, that means that we are not necessarily looking at the split between dual use or defense funding and civilian funding, but we are looking at improving framework conditions for all of the companies and all of the innovators.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amleto and Branislav as well. We have one more question from a very good friend of this format, Dimitris Korpakis, and then the final one from our Vice President for Research and Innovation. So please, Dimitri, you know the rules of the game. The floor is yours. We are allowing you to join our chat.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thanks for a very rich presentation. I know that you were on a consultation, but I was struck to find out there was no real question about the role of places and innovation ecosystems, because we cannot think about supporting innovation without thinking about the different components that would make it happen on the ground. And the union is not an homogeneous area. It is not a cohesion issue, by the way, because I know that in many ways my previous DG looks to all these issues as a cohesion policy issue. It's not only a cohesion policy issue, and I would remind everybody that the concept of smart specialization was born in digital research and innovation in 2009. So again, I think it's a unique opportunity for the Innovation Act to keep an eye also on the role of places, cities, for example. I wouldn't say specifically regions, but exactly the role of innovation ecosystems and how they can really give more strength to Europe's innovation, and of course giving a link also to two issues, to industrial policy and to access to capital, because access to capital was always an issue. It's not a new thing, but to have access to capital, we need to develop in Europe a real internal capital market that is really still missing. So I will stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitri. Would you like to comment on that?
I can only agree with you. So place-based innovation. It's maybe it was not very prominently featured in the consultation, but it is, of course, remains in the back of our minds when we look at these issues. We also understand that the importance of hubs in terms of innovation. So hubs created around universities, around research and technology organizations, where then it has sort of a natural tendency to then attract investment, attract talent, and also then serve as the testing grounds for instance regulators. So that's for us. We are very much aware of that, and it's in the back of our minds. If we are not directly targeting place-based innovation or places in innovation, that's simply because, again, we are trying to have as broad impact as possible, really not preferably not favoring one place to the other, or preferably not favoring one technology area to the other. So that's a bit the reason behind.
Thank you for this exchange. Last question, quickly to Turin.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Andrea. The time is running out, but I just have a question regarding regulations to improve innovation from all the suggested pillars in the coming framework program and relations to the European Competitiveness Fund. Because I believe that there are really possibilities of fast-track innovation solutions from, basic research, pillar 1, pillar 2, and also, of course, pillar 3, and so on. So, have you addressed how the Competitiveness Fund would really work together with the rest of the framework program and make good regulations so we really get fast-track innovation out of it?
From the angle of the Innovation Act, once again, this was a little bit outside of the scope. So we are, as I said, not really looking at funding instruments. It doesn't mean that the feedback that we have collected will not be useful in also shaping those instruments. And I think it's also our utmost wish and priority to make Innovation Act very much compatible with the funding instruments across the EU. So that goes without saying. But we have received quite a bit of feedback exactly on this, on having sort of quite a clear pathway between various funding instruments that should indeed help fast tracking and speeding up the deployment of research, funded research all the way through the funding journey to be placed on the market as an innovation. So that's again, it's I agree with you. It's an important element.
Yeah, because very often you see the regulations and in one funding instrument might be different in another. So it's very important to have a streamlined regulation format from one funding mechanism to another. So that was actually my point, to really get fast-track innovation. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation and very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jordi, for your contribution. We are coming to the end of this 1 Hour with Europe session. I would like to take a moment to thank you all for participating. We do apologize for the technical issue at the very beginning of this session with the mic, but we solved it in a few minutes. So Branislav's presentation, I read that was okay. A special thanks to you, Branislav, for your time and for sharing all these valuable insights on the outcomes of the consultation. I used the tourist last question to connect to the next session of 1 Hour with Europe. Is going to be on the 14th of November. The topic will be the Future Competitiveness Fund. So we're going to host a director from DG Grow and exchange with him on this subject. So it's a kind of follow-up to the next session. So we look forward to welcoming you again for the next session. And thank you all for being with us today, and have a nice day.